episode. I am very excited that we're having with us Dr. Laura DeCesaris. I hope I pronounced that right. I don't know why I get tongue tied with that one. So thank you so much, Dr. Laura, for being with us.
Of course, and don't worry, everybody does. So no big deal. Not the easiest last name in the world, but thanks so much for having me. So excited to be here. Always love chatting with you.
Yeah, can you tell the audience what you do?
Yeah, so I am a functional medicine practitioner, and really I work in the high performance health space. So I primarily work with female entrepreneurs, executives, and athletes, helping them really optimize every area of their life and understand how to build their business, compete in their sport in a way that's very aligned with their female hormones, their female biochemistry. So it's a lot of moving from feeling good to feeling really great. Um, yeah, and I had a very non-conventional path to get here. When people say, "Oh, how did you get into that?" It's like, well, we kind of end up finding people like us to work with because it's relatable. We know our story. I actually got my start in chiropractic because the first functional medicine practitioner I ever met, I was 21 years old, thought I was on a path to go into research. I was at Cornell University, but it didn't feel right. And my mom was like, come with me. I'm going to take you to see this lady. She does like functional medicine or something. And I'm like, "Oh, what is that?" Okay. I go to this woman who completely changed my life, like asking me all these questions just by looking at me like, "Oh, are you having gut problems? And you're not sleeping very well. And how do you feel after you eat these foods?" And literally my jaw was dropping like, okay, this is really cool. I'm going to do whatever this lady does. She was a chiropractor. So literally the next day applied to chiropractic school, off I went. Obviously wasn't exactly the same thing as functional medicine, but while I was there, I was able to find a mentor who was a functional medicine practitioner. She led me to groups like Institute for Functional Medicine, Academy for Anti-Aging Medicine, so I could start studying kind of where structure meets nutrition. And the rest is history. I worked with a lot of chronic pain autoimmune clients for about a decade because I myself have Hashimoto's, and that was kind of just something that really resonated with me. And then these last couple years, as I was introduced to different entrepreneurial communities, I really decided, well, this is kind of where I'm at in my life, looking to really optimize everything I do and be able to balance running a business with having a really fulfilled, happy life. So that made my decision to kind of step into this world of high performance health.
That's something that, I really only a few years ago heard of the term functional medicine, and I'm very familiar in the kind of the circles that you and I run in. We're very familiar with that terminology. But it was brought up to me recently that the layperson may not have ever heard of functional medicine or even know what that is. So, can you explain what is functional medicine?
Yeah, you're so right. And I think also a lot of people, if they have heard of it, immediately what comes to mind is like all of these supplements and testing and very expensive things. And really it's not the most well understood phrase, but really it should be more called like integrative medicine, holistic medicine. Really what it is it's looking at things instead of waiting for something to go wrong and then trying to remove symptoms. Like you go to the doctor for a headache, here, take this to get rid of your headache. Instead, a functional medicine practitioner is going to say, okay, obviously we want you to get rid of this headache, but let's figure out why it's happening so that we can set you up for success in the long term. Maybe it's hormones, maybe it's the food you're eating, maybe it's that you're not very good at hydrating and taking electrolytes and something that simple. So it's really looking at, these kind of different root causes and really personalizing it for each person that comes in, because I think we've all experienced at some point, like there is no one size fits all in medicine. Like as much as we wish there would be, like we all know the person who was like, oh, my sister did the keto diet and fasted and she got great results and I did not. And it's because we're actually so unique. So functional medicine, when it's done correctly, really honors that and helps people understand like, this is why this is happening. So here's how we can do things, not just with supplements, but with your nutrition, with your lifestyle, with exercise, with getting outside in the fresh air and actually letting you feel good instead of just kind of humming along, feeling so, and, putting band-aids on symptoms as they pop up.
I love that because unfortunately, I think a lot of traditional medicine is that way. It's like, okay, you have a symptom, like for example, what you said with the headache. let's give you a Tylenol, let's give you an aspirin, let's give you a Motrin, when wouldn't it be so much nicer to find out what's causing your headache and stop them from happening again than just covering them up all the time?
Right, absolutely. And I think a lot of times we kind of fall into this trap where people think, oh, it's either or. It's either I'm going to go to a functional medicine doctor, I'm going to go to a regular doctor, and the other side has it all wrong. And really you need both because, conventional medicine, emergency medicine, like there's some things there that you just can't counter that are so important for us just as human beings. But then when we look at kind of this more wellness related work, chronic illnesses, kind of these vague symptoms that a lot of women experience, like fatigue, anxiety, things like that, like that's where functional medicine really shines because it helps each woman understand, like, hey, we have to look at you, like all of you, your hormones, your thoughts, your environment, your relationships, and kind of we have that conventional medicine shining in its strengths and functional medicine shining in its strengths, ideally working together.
I think it's so interesting that you've kind of picked this high functioning client as basically the main people that you're working with, because this brings in so much of that mind, body, spirit aspect of medicine, because so many people that are high function are also very high stress. And so, how do you see that that's affecting their health?
100%. It's really, the longer I do this, the more I realize the importance of that mindset piece of your thoughts. And what I actually see in a lot of these women, and I used to be guilty of this, is they'll add mindset work to the to-do list, like a box to check off, like, oh, did my 5 minutes of mindset work. And that's really not how it works, right? Like true mindset work is kind of this awareness that you have to work on throughout the day of where am I at in my body? Where am I at in space? Making sure I'm not on autopilot, just kind of running myself into a wall so that it's like high achieving, high achieving, high achieving burnout. Let me repeat that cycle 3 or 4 times a year. Like we want to get out of that cycle and kind of step back into this awareness where we reconnect with our body, with our intuition, with our thoughts. A conversation I love to have with these women when they're like, oh, are thoughts really that important? Like, okay, think about before you go on stage to speak or before a big race or before an important meeting, right? Like you get butterflies in your stomach, your heart races, like that connection behind those scenarios you're creating in your mind, what your mindset, what your thoughts are. It does have physical responses in the body, which can seem kind of scary at first, but then it's really cool because that means you have control over it. So when you decide that you have a certain mindset towards anything in life, your business, your health, how you want to show up, your mood, you actually have more control than you think. But it takes some retraining of your brain. It takes a little retraining of some of those circuits. And that's the hard work for most women. It's not the diet or the workout plan or the supplements. Like we think that's hard. That part's actually really easy. It's what's going on up here. And the more that you understand your body as a woman, that you understand that, well, maybe you're just looking at your schedule and your life from a more like male centric perspective, and we need to shift that towards a female centric perspective to honor your body. That's when the magic really happens, and life becomes a lot more easier. We hear that phrase work life balance, that we only hear women talking about this. I do not hear men talking about that. So I actually don't like that phrase. I think what most women are looking for is like a work life alignment where they don't feel like they have to escape from their job or their life, every weekend or every vacation. But it takes a lot of work shifting just how we think about all these things and learning new things, which can always be hard.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
All right, and we're back now with Dr. Laura DeCesaris and talking about high functional medicine and high functioning women. Before the break, we were talking about this idea, and I know I've done it myself. I'm like work, 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 work. And then, oh, mindset, meditation, relaxation. I'll do that stuff when the work is done. Like exercise. I'll do that when the work is done. Like, do you see this in your clients too?
100%. I work I work with a lot of women who I guess would be classified as type A women, and a lot of them have type A'd themselves like right into a health crisis of sorts, and they try and type A their way out of it. And like, I get it. That's been me in the past, like 100%. I know what that's like. You try and do everything you possibly can immediately to start feeling better, but when you're a really hard worker, maybe you're also, a mom, you're a wife, you're a partner, you have all of these different obligations, like it can feel really difficult to kind of try and do them all and make changes in every area of your life at once. So like you said, I'll see some women try and compartmentalize it. They'll be like, nope, going to forget about all this stuff, just working. I will do that when my 3 weeks of work are done. But if you're in a corporate role or you're an entrepreneur, like, the work is never going to be done. It's always going to be there. So we have to start finding ways to kind of sift some of these things into your lifestyle more. I think where most women run into trouble is they try and change everything at once, right? Like they're starting to feel like something health-wise is coming on. Either they're tired, they're not sleeping well, maybe they've gained weight. So the next day they're like, okay, strict diet, all the supplements, going to do the mindset work, going to do this. And we're like setting ourselves up for failure. And throughout all of that, I know that you'll appreciate this with your background. The thing that we don't do on top of that is we don't consider our hormones and kind of where the state of our physiology is throughout that. So that's something that I love teaching women about, is like, okay, if we need to start bringing more health and wellness and mindset work into our life, and it's a busy life, let's do it little by little in a sustainable way and figure out the things that are going to move the needle the most for each woman, with this lens of what is your hormone profile, so that we know when you can handle stress a little better than other times. Like, if you're a woman with a cycle, like couple days from the start of it is not the time to completely overhaul your life. It's going to feel like the world is crashing down around you, right? So starting again with that awareness I spoke about earlier, like let's come home into our bodies as women and learn how they actually work, so that we can understand how we're moving, how we're functioning in this world.
That's interesting that you brought up the idea about how the cycle will affect what you're telling them to do, because I read something about that not too long ago, about even like, because of the hormones, and we think of hormones as like, okay, well, these things control our period, but they're actually neurotransmitters and affect our brain. So they're saying that there's certain times of a month, if a woman's cycling, that they should be making like business decisions versus sometimes they shouldn't. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, 100%. So, assuming for the intent of this conversation, we're talking about a woman who has a regular menstrual cycle, but there are certain parts of that cycle when, as women, we are really primed to step into leadership and decision making. There's times when we're really primed for like learning and information, and there's times when we're primed to take a step back and just reflect and listen to our intuition. And we've kind of lost that over the years, because when we look at the traditional work schedule, at least if you're in like the corporate 9 to 5 world, it's really created for someone who has the same biochemistry day after day, like men. But as women, like, we are 4 different creatures physiologically over the course of a menstrual cycle. A lot of my clients' husbands will always laugh when I say that, oh, I knew it. But the reality is we are. And if we can start understanding that, it also makes our business flow a lot better. So, when our cycle is kind of just starting off, it's called the follicular phase. We have, estrogen rising. Most women feel really good. Like, estrogen also plays a lot of roles in brain function. The brain has a ton of estrogen receptors there. So what you'll find is women in this phase, they are naturally primed to step into leadership roles. Their creativity tends to really blossom right here. It's a great time for creative planning, for making decisions about like what they want their business, their lives to look like this month. Great time for team meetings, things like that. And then, as you start to move into this stage of ovulation, most women feel really good during this phase, as long as she's ovulating. Great time for speaking opportunities, for networking events. It's kind of this feeling when a woman's ovulating that people want to be around you. And likewise, you tend to be more social. So why not leverage that? Great time to ask for a raise if you're in the corporate world and looking for that. after ovulation, as we move kind of into this third phase called the luteal phase, which is when progesterone starts to rise a little bit more, this is kind of like our get stuff done phase. We tend to have a really good like aptitude for learning. So a lot of my clients, I'll be like, go do your continuing education here, like all those courses and master classes you've been saving, go listen to them now, learn, like follow through on the plans you set for yourself earlier in the month. And then we kind of start moving into this premenstrual and menstrual phase, which for a lot of women is where things can start to move downhill sometimes. But usually what I tell women is like, this is not the time, if you can get away with it, to like overschedule yourself. As kind of all of the hormones drop out in preparation for menstruation to begin, your brain chemistry goes along for the ride. So like serotonin takes a dip, all of those feel good brain chemicals. So women can tend to feel anxious. They can not want to go out and socialize. It can kind of be harder to handle stress. Your nervous system isn't as good at handling stress in this time. So what it is a great time for is reflecting, like, how did the month go? Interestingly enough, women's intuition tends to be really high at this side. So like doing a good gut check, saying, how are things going? How am I doing? Where do I need to do better? And reflecting on that, whether it's personal life or business. So, as a woman, when you start to understand how this works, you could really see how applicable it is to your business, to like creating a schedule for your family life, for creating time for yourself. Like real self-care is based on what you need hormonally at any certain point in the cycle.
You know what I find so fascinating about that? I was starting to think like, and this is awesome information for women, but can you imagine if corporations took this information and
Right.
first of all, that we could open up the conversations about menstrual cycle and it'd be like no big deal, and like guys wouldn't get freaked out. And that actually if corporations like adjusted like the workload schedules based on this, that would be really interesting.
And like, I think now with a lot of companies still having a hybrid work schedule, like post-pandemic, like it might not be the worst thing for a lot of reasons, like not just, again, cutting down on transportation and all of that, but for women, it does afford you a little bit more of that flexibility to think about what's going, okay, these are the days I need to be in the office, but now I have a little extra downtime to support myself how I need to throughout the course of a month. Which really can help skyrocket a woman's productivity, her mood, like her quality of life. And really that's what we want in terms of supporting someone's career.
This has been great. Where can people find out more information about you?
Yeah, so I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook under my name, Dr. Laura DeCessaris, or my website, drlauradecessaris.com. Pretty active in all of those places. So love to hear from people. Feel free to reach out.
Awesome. I just going to remind everybody, make sure you go and find her on social media, on her website. While you're there, like, follow. Also, check me out at Dr. Betsy Greenleaf and multiple different social media. Also, the drbetsygreenleaf.com. Go give that a follow. And don't forget to tune in for another episode next week. So, thank you so much, Dr. Laura, for taking the time to be with us today.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.